shoot. Just kisses it on the way past. It's like a good car, like when those fucking cars drift and they just like, bonk, the railing around the side of the track. It's just like, that's a long Halloween, bonk. Just a little bit of it. Alrighty then, let's talk the Batman. Here it is. I went and saw the Batman the other night in cinemas, and I got some thoughts. I got some feelings, and it is the return of Ricki Reviews here on Twitch and on YouTube as well. All right, Batman. Directed by Matt Reeves, who is a director that I really, really enjoy. Brings a really good sense of feeling, scope, scale to his movies. Starring Robert Pattinson as the Batman, the titular Batman, who I thought, all in all, and I think this is a blanket statement for the entire movie. We'll talk about the good stuff first and we'll move on to the other stuff in a sec. A great performance by him. I thought he was fantastic in the role. I did like that we sort of centered on a era of Batman that has been like touched upon in the films previously, but we're at that stage where like we've seen the Batman Begins stuff obviously in Batman Begins, like year 1 Batman, year 0 Batman, and this is like year 2 Batman. He's established working with the cops, although begrudgingly on the cops' behalf. Yeah, we're getting him like figuring stuff out still. And that's very apparent in a lot of this film is just like, he doesn't exactly know what he's doing. He's got a good idea, but he's still trying to like work his shit out, which is really, really cool. Cause like in the Nolan verse, we had like Batman Begins and it's the same sort of deal. He's like year 1 Batman working stuff out. And then it kind of skips to like the Joker era in Dark Knight. And then like obviously skips ahead like a huge chunk of time in Dark Knight Rises. So we get like a novice Batman going straight into a very, very experienced Batman in Dark Knight Rises, in Dark Knight. Even though I don't think a lot of time is supposed to pass between those two films because he gets like the Joker card at the end of the first one. But here we get like that middle ground of like, all right, he's been doing this for a while. He has a reputation amongst the city, but it's not cemented quite yet because there are like multiple times in this film where it's like people know who this guy is, yet they seem to either feign ignorance or just think that his entire reputation is overblown and like try to fight him. Happens like twice. I think very early in the film, there's like 2 situations where it's just like, do you know who I am? And they're just like, yeah, and we're going to try and beat you up. And then they get their absolute shit kicked in by Batman because it's like, do you know who this is? Do you understand who this guy is? Like, clearly you know. But one of the cool things they do to set up like his presence in the city early is the really cool opening scene of like, before you see Batman, you just see like these shots of Gotham and there's all these sort of scenarios happening where crime is taking place and then boom, in the sky, the bat signal goes up and you see all these people committing crimes suddenly looking up and going, oh shit, he's out tonight. And then like checking the shadows, checking around corners, like he could be anywhere. So obviously there has been an establishment of like, this dude will go after you for, you know, whatever crime, whether it was like, I think the crimes we saw were like vandalism, robbery, assault, shit like that. And there is this knowledge amongst the criminals that he could be just in the shadows waiting for you. So like, that's a really, really cool way to set up like where he is, but then it's completely undercut straight away in the next scene by like a group on that night, seeing the bat signal going, whatever. And then being approached by Batman and like I said, getting their shit kicked in. And it's kind of like, well, what level are we on here? Is it actually like people are shit scared of him or, and it could have just been the fact that they were in a group and everyone else that we saw was like relatively acting on their own. So somewhat forgivable. But then something similar happens like 15, 20 minutes later in the film and he, you know, fights his way into a club to find the Penguin. And it's just like the bouncers are like, we know who you are. We're going to try and fight you. And they all get like just beat the hell up. But yeah, I did like that way of like setting up how Batman is perceived in this version of Gotham. And then immediately we get another scene where, so you get like the criminal point of view and then immediately goes into like the cop point of view where it's like he rocks up to a crime scene. At this point in his career, the only one vouching for him in any way is Gordon. And I got to say, Jeffrey Wright, fantastic job as Gordon. And the tension when he walks into a room is just palpable. The cops are clearly like, they do not trust this dude as far as they could throw him. He doesn't trust them because he knows most of them are probably some Like at some level, they are corrupt. That's what he only really, puts up with. And it does feel like he puts up with Gordon. Gordon just feels like a convenience for him rather than a friend. Kind of takes advantage of that, which is an interesting dynamic. Like obviously, if there's going to be more of these, that dynamic will grow the longer he's Batman, the longer he works with Gordon. But for now, it's just like, yeah, I'm kind of using you. And then Gordon's kind of using him because obviously he's seen in past cases with like, this dude is a lot smarter and has a lot like access to better technology or far superior technology than what the cops have, even though that doesn't really raise many questions about who could possibly afford all of that technology. There's like this one billionaire in town who's very reclusive, but definitely not Bruce Wayne. The first 20 minutes or so gives you an idea of the city, an idea of the police force, and an idea of Batman's place in both of those. The one thing we really don't get in this film is a lot of Bruce Wayne. It is very much like he hasn't yet established the Bruce Wayne alter ego. And that is a big thing in Batman films, is that Batman films, Batman media, all Batman stuff is that Bruce Wayne is the alter ego. It's kind of the same as like Superman. Clark Kent is the alter ego. Superman is the real Clark Kent. And that's kind of the same here. Like there is no, like it's not that he's a playboy, he's this socialite, feigning idiocy, feigning stupidity to throw people off the trail. No, he's very much like, I think in a lot of people's like crosshairs is like, this guy could be the Batman. He's actually really weird. He's got this fucking money. Like he hasn't established that alter ego yet. And we don't really get a lot of that. And I'm hoping potentially down the line, if we do get a sequel to this movie, which I think we will, we're going to get an idea of what a Robert Pattinson Bruce Wayne looks like in the vein a la Christian Bale did for the character, what Ben Affleck did for the character, what all the Batmans have done to differentiate what is Bruce Wayne and what is Batman. It doesn't feel like the actual character himself has worked that out yet. So hopefully we're going to get that down the line. But that was a really cool thing. It's like, he is just this obsessive, compulsive, just the only thing that matters to him is being Batman, is this mission that he's given himself to rid the city of crime to the detriment of his entire life. Like all he does is be Batman. That's it. It was sort of played with in the Nolan movies. But at that point, that Bruce Wayne had done enough to be like, all right, I've established myself as this socialite that no one could ever believe goes out and beats people up at night. The Riddler, Paul Dano. Love Paul Dano. Great actor. Love him in a lot of shit. And this is no exception. He's really, really good in this. It is definitely an interesting direction to go because they've definitely lent into the era that this Batman exists in. So this is a very modern era Batman. And I know that's what we got in The Dark Knight as well. Or in the Dark Knight trilogy was modern day technology. There's no sort of limitations on what Batman can do. But that didn't really translate to his villains. And trying to dance around this without going into spoilers, but he's kind of a Reddit edgelord. A little bit. There's a little bit of that in this film. There's a little bit of a we live in a society Joker-esque kind of stuff. There's definitely some parallels here to the Joker in The Dark Knight, filming himself at certain points, sending stuff to the police. It's also very, very Zodiac. This does feel like a Fincher film a lot. It does feel like Zodiac a lot. His version of sending letters to the cops is filming himself and sending footage to the cops. But there is that added element of he lives in an internet age where he's essentially, and this is minor spoilers, so block your ears if you don't want to hear them, trying to shine a light on the corruption, the inherent corruption within societal frameworks, police, politicians, all that sort of shit. And shining a light on it and bringing to light corruption where there should be no corruption. But doing it in an internet age does immediately lend yourself to, okay, how is he getting his message out there? Message boards, Tor browsers and shit, like dark web shit, deep web shit. You know what I mean? It's you have to kind of, as a filmmaker, go, okay, if you want to make this as realistic and gritty as possible, and this does feel like the most realistic and gritty Batman we've had. It feels like that every time we have a new series of Batman films. It's oh, this is realistic and gritty. The Nolan ones, obviously, aside from a few conveniences, definitely felt grounded. This one does feel very grounded as well. And if you want to portray that to the film-going audience, it's well, how is a guy like the Riddler going to get his message out there to the people? And like I said, the answer is like message boards and shit. Like, and it does become that kind of like, there's a part in the movie where the whole grand scheme of his plan is revealed. And it's a very odd scene. I'm not going to give anything away, but it does change the tone and dynamic of what the Riddler has been established as early film. It kind of just takes that and does a little flip. Then it's like, well, the conceit is you have to give him that scene to kind of play it off in a realistic way. And I'm really trying to dance around spoilers here. I know what I'm saying probably doesn't make a lot of sense. When you see the scene, you will know the scene. If you haven't seen the film yet, or if you haven't seen the scene, you know exactly the scene I'm talking about, where it's just like, that was a weird turn. It was a weird little thing they did when his whole plan is kind of like revealed. The Riddler it does feel like it's the Zodiac killer. Even like they put him in this like mask. If I remember correctly, the Zodiac, like the couple of the images or pictures that people described to like sketch artists, like he was wearing a mask and shit. He had like this weird symbol on his chest and shit. And they kind of like play that up in this film as well. It's a little bit Zodiac. It's a little bit Seven. It's a little bit a lot of films where there's this unraveling mystery as you go through, and there's like a couple of hardened cops on the case. In this case, it's Gordon and Batman on the case of this killer. It does brush up against and then like completely divert from the Long Halloween storyline. Like literally the first kill in the film happens on Halloween. I'm just like, fucking beauty. Okay, baby, we're getting the Long Halloween storyline. It's like, shoot. Just kisses it on the way past. It's like a good car, like when those fucking cars drift and they just like, bonk, the railing around the side of the track. It's just like, that's a Long Halloween, bonk. Just a little bit of it. You get like little teasers for like Hush, Court of Owls, and like you never get that, but it's like, are we setting this up? Are we putting the pieces in place for future films to do stuff like Hush, to do stuff like The Court of Owls? That would be sick going forward. But what we got here was like a good introduction into this new Batman, I feel. Is the long way of saying everything that I just said. It is a good introduction into this world. It gave us a good look at our core characters. They're going to be like playing a big part, assumedly, in the future going forward. The other one, I got to say, Zoe Kravitz as Catwoman, awesome. Just fantastic. Really, really good like depiction of Catwoman. And the relationship between her and Batman is set up really, really well. Really early. Not necessarily in the film, but just like early in this universe going forward, if she's going to come back as a recurring character. Their relationship is established really, really well. Now for some of the things that I didn't like. It's a long film. It's very long. Be prepared for that. And it's not even like something like going into Endgame, for example. That just clipped by because there was always something happening. There's always something to keep your attention. And it just jumped from like set piece to set piece to set piece. This does spend downtime, establishing the world, establishing the characters. It is hard to say that it is to the film's detriment, but it kind of is a little bit. I don't like saying that, but it does drag. It does drag. But like thinking back, I'm just like, what if I was a film editor? What would I take out of it? Hard call to make. One that I definitely would not like to be the person making that call. But apparently there's like a 4-hour cut of this movie out there somewhere, which I'm like, do I want to see that? Kind of, but in a couple of sittings. Like it's a lot to get through. And I think the ending is kind of a mess. Like once we get through, who the Riddler is, why he's doing what he's doing, and sort of Batman's involvement in the whole thing, the ending's kind of just a bit off. Once again, not going into any spoilers, but that was the weakest part for me was the last like 15 to 20 minutes. Just didn't really hit. But then again, a lot of Batman films have that issue where it's like, especially when it's a villain that is not someone that Batman can just punch in the face repeatedly. Like, I reckon the ending to The Dark Knight Rises, this is going to be controversial. The ending to Dark Knight Rises is a lot more streamlined and just, it's a lot easier on your movie-going sensibilities than the ending of The Dark Knight. this is my example. You can flame me in the comments if you want. The ending to The Dark Knight The Dark Knight, always to me felt weird. It felt like the Harvey Dent stuff was just this epilogue where it's like, he got the Joker, you punched him a couple of times, but then you threw him off a fucking building and caught him, and then he's left hanging, dangling, and then you look at your watch and you're just like, oh, this movie's got like 10 minutes to go. What else is going to happen? And then you get the Harvey Dent shit. Whereas like Dark Knight Rises is just kind of like, yeah, you punch Bane a lot. That's not to say that like Batman should only have villains that he can punch. The cerebral battle that Batman has with a lot of villains is good, but at the same time, a lot easier to convey that and finish and round out a story in comic book form than it is in movie form. Because in movie form, you need action, you need stuff happening. You can't just rely entirely on dialogue. And that's where I feel like a lot of the Batman endings kind of fall apart a little bit. Batman Begins, for example, Ra's al Ghul goes off a train tracks and dies in a big explosion. That's a very easy thing to follow and a very easy thing to do in a filmmaking way, and to, you know, sort of explain to the audience that he's fucking dead. Whereas like Dark Knight, it's like the ending of the Joker is he's swinging back and forward, the cops are there, but we never see him in jail. We never see him be arrested. But Dark Knight Rises, it's like Bane gets punched and then shot with the bat pod, and then Talia al Ghul drives off a fucking bridge into what is the worst death scene of all time. Very, very easy things to sort of like to follow. And then when we get to this film, again, it's like, all right, how do you end a film where you can't really just end it with Batman punching Riddler in the face? Kind of got to do some convoluted shit to give yourself an action beat right at the end of the film. And they had to kind of do that here in a couple of set pieces that I felt were really, really rushed. With all that being said, probably the only real drawbacks I had to this film. A couple of the things that like just didn't really hit as well as I would have liked them to. Like I said, the messaging of like, are people scared of Batman or not, kind of flip-flopped a couple of times during the film. But for the most part, they stayed pretty on brand with that. And I think by the next film, it'll be like, all right, criminals are fucking terrified of this dude. And yeah, I just think that last 20 minutes just, and then, like it being a bit long, and then the last 20 minutes, like being a very odd last 20 minutes, just like it did feel like, oh, we've got this cool conclusion with Batman and the Riddler, but we still need like, we've got some time to kill here. Let's throw in a big action set piece to finish the whole thing off that doesn't really involve the Riddler. And once again, I'm trying not to spoil it, but it's kind of hard not to. But that's it. I think that's it. That's all I will say about this film. I really enjoyed it. I had a good time in the cinema, but I think it doesn't exactly land the way I would have liked it to. There we go.